Hello, my name is Viola. I have 61 years old. And for most of my life, I believed that patience was the same thing as love. After years of betrayal and quiet humiliation, I finally found the courage to leave my husband. I started over with a new job, a small apartment, and a freedom that felt fragile, like glass in my hands. Every evening, I walked my dog through the same square, and every evening, I left a few coins for an elderly homeless man who sat on the same bench. It wasn't charity to me, it was simply kindness, the only thing I still trusted in myself. Then one night, everything changed. As I was about to walk away, the old man suddenly grabbed my arm, his grip trembling but urgent, and whispered words that still echo in my chest. "You're too kind to me. Take your dog, go to a hotel, stay the night, and tomorrow you'll thank me." Fear and confusion flooded me, but something in his eyes told me this wasn't madness. It was a warning. What happened next would shatter the life I thought I knew and force me to become someone I never imagined I could be. But before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching from. I truly love reading your comments and knowing where you come from. Now let's understand how this story really began. I left my husband the way someone leaves a burning house quietly, without looking back, carrying only what I could hold with trembling hands. There was no dramatic confrontation, no final scream. Just a silence so heavy it pressed against my chest for months afterward. Years of betrayal don't explode, they erode. They turn love into something brittle, something that cuts when you try to touch it. I was 61 when I walked away, and people love to pretend that at that age, reinvention is a luxury you no longer deserve. But humiliation has a way of clarifying things. It teaches you that staying can be far more terrifying than leaving. My new life was smaller, a modest apartment, a job that didn't ask questions about my past, mornings that smelled like cheap coffee instead of resentment. And Benny had been with me through everything, arguments whispered behind closed doors, nights spent staring at the ceiling, pretending sleep was possible. He was a brown poodle with soft, intelligent eyes and a quiet loyalty that felt almost human. When I finally packed my bags, he sat by the door, tail still, watching me as if to say, "I'm ready when you are." Every evening, we walked through the same small square near my building. The trees there were old, their branches bent with time, like people who had learned to survive by yielding. That's where I met the old man. He sat on the same bench every day, wrapped in layers that no longer matched the season. His beard was wild, his hands always trembling slightly as if they remembered warmth better than they felt it. I never asked his name. I never asked how he ended up there. I simply left a few coins beside him each night, a quiet transaction of dignity. He would nod once, eyes down, as if gratitude was too fragile to risk exposing. That night felt no different at first. The air was heavy, the kind that makes you aware of every sound, distant traffic, the rustle of leaves, Benny's soft paws against the pavement. I was thinking about nothing in particular, which was, for me, a luxury. Then the old man stood. His movement was sudden enough to make me stop. Before I could step back, his hand closed around my arm. His grip was surprisingly firm, his fingers cold through my sleeve. "You're too kind," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Too kind for this place." I opened my mouth to reassure him, to tell him it was fine, that I wasn't afraid. That's what women like me do. We minimize danger so others don't feel uncomfortable. But then he leaned closer, and I saw his eyes. They weren't confused. They weren't distant. They were sharp, clear, terrifyingly present. "Take your dog," he whispered. "Go to a hotel. Stay the night, and tomorrow you'll thank me." My heart stuttered. I looked down at Benny instinctively, seeking the grounding comfort he always gave me. His body was tense, a low growl vibrating in his chest, but he wasn't looking at the man. He was staring into the shadows behind us. The park suddenly felt different. The darkness between the trees seemed thicker, more deliberate. I felt foolish for noticing it, for letting fear creep in after years of telling myself I was stronger than that. Still, my skin prickled, every instinct quietly screaming. The old man released my arm as abruptly as he'd grabbed it. He stepped back, already shrinking into the shape the world expected of him. "Please," he said, softer now, "trust me." I walked away without another word. Benny pressed close to my leg. Each step felt heavier than the last, my mind racing with explanations that felt thin and desperate. By the time I reached my apartment, my hands were shaking. I told myself I was overreacting. That kindness doesn't come with premonitions. That fear isn't wisdom. But I packed an overnight bag anyway. The motel was cheap and smelled faintly of bleach and old smoke. The bedspread was thin, the kind that never quite warms you. I locked the door twice, then checked it again. Benny curled against my chest, his breathing steady, his warmth anchoring me to the present. I barely slept. Every sound made me flinch. Every shadow felt like a mistake I hadn't seen coming. I held Benny until dawn, whispering apologies into his fur for dragging him into a life that never seemed to settle. Morning came quietly. Too quietly. I turned on the television out of habit more than curiosity. The local news logo flashed across the screen, followed by images that made my blood turn to ice. My building, fire trucks, yellow tape, smoke stains crawling up the walls like scars. "A suspicious gas explosion," the anchor said calmly. "Authorities report that one unit was completely destroyed." They zoomed in, my unit. The room spun. I slid down onto the edge of the bed, clutching Benny so tightly he let out a small, confused sound. Hours earlier, I would have been there. Making tea, feeding him breakfast, living my ordinary, fragile life. I thought of the old man's eyes, of the shadows in the park, of the way Benny had growled, not in fear, but in warning. My kindness hadn't saved me. It had almost killed me. The first vibration startled me. The second made my stomach drop. By the third, my phone felt heavier than it should have, like it was carrying a weight I hadn't agreed to hold. I stared at the screen. Still sitting on the edge of the motel bed, Benny pressed against my thigh. Unknown number. Voicemail notification. Another unknown number. A text preview lit up the screen. "This is the police. You are requested to surrender yourself immediately." I didn't understand at first. My mind tried to organize it into something reasonable. Maybe they wanted a statement. Maybe they assumed I was a witness. Maybe this was all a mistake that could be corrected with calm explanations and the truth. I had spent most of my life believing the truth was enough. Then the calls kept coming. Not one, not two, a flood. Voicemails stacking on top of each other, each more urgent than the last. The tone was not concern. It was not confusion. It was accusation. My hands shook as I finally pressed play on one of the messages. A man's voice, clipped and professional, filled the room. "Viola Harrison, you are considered a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. You are instructed to present yourself to the nearest police station immediately. Person of interest." The phrase echoed in my head like a crack spreading through glass. I sat there for a long time, staring at the patterned carpet, my breathing shallow. Benny shifted, sensing the change in me, his body warm and solid against my leg. I buried my fingers in his curls, grounding myself in something that couldn't lie. When I finally gathered the courage to check my email, the truth arrived with surgical cruelty. There it was. The report. The narrative. My life rewritten in cold, official language. Richard had spoken. According to him, I was unstable, fragile, suicidal, a woman unraveling quietly after years of emotional decline. He claimed I had been making disturbing comments, that I had talked about wanting to burn it all down, that I had left in a state of distress, that the explosion might not have been an accident. I felt something inside me fold inward, not breaking, but compressing into a smaller, sharper shape. Of course he had done this. Richard knew me better than anyone. He knew I avoided conflict, that I hated mess, that I believed dignity meant restraint. He knew I would never scream in public or throw accusations without proof, and he used that knowledge like a weapon. He didn't need to destroy me loudly. He only needed to let the world believe him. My vision blurred. I hadn't realized I was crying until Benny stood up, placing his paws gently against my chest, his tongue brushing the tears from my cheeks with slow, deliberate strokes. There was no panic in him, no confusion, only presence. "I know," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I know, baby." In that moment, the most painful realization settled in my bones. My kindness hadn't been a virtue to Richard. It had been an opening, a weakness he had studied and waited to exploit. I wiped my face, breathing through the tightness in my chest. Fear still lived there, but beneath it, something else was stirring. A question I had never allowed myself to ask before. What if I didn't disappear quietly this time? The answer scared me almost as much as the accusations. I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. Not without proof. And there was only one person who could confirm the most important detail of all that I had left before the explosion. The old man. I grabbed my keys, my hands moving on instinct now, and Benny jumped down, alert and ready. The drive back to the square felt unreal, like moving through a memory instead of a place. Every red light felt like a countdown. Every passing car made my shoulders tense. When I arrived, the bench was empty. No blanket, no bag, no familiar shape curled against the cold wood. Panic surged through me, sharp and immediate. I searched the nearby paths, my voice sounding too loud as I called out to someone whose name I had never asked for. People passed me without looking, the way they always had. Here was just a square again, ordinary, indifferent. I stood there, breath hitching, the weight of failure pressing down on me. I was too late. Again. Then Benny tugged gently on the leash, pulling me back toward the bench. He lowered his head, sniffing insistently near the ground. I followed his gaze. Tucked beneath the bench, partially hidden in shadow, was an envelope. My heart hammered as I knelt, my knees brushing the cold pavement. The envelope was torn, the edges rough, as if it had been removed in a hurry. Written across the front, in careful, elegant strokes, was my name, Viola. The handwriting stopped me cold. It was precise, confident, familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. I hadn't seen that script in years, but memory has a way of preserving the things that once mattered. I traced the letters with my thumb, a strange mix of dread and hope tightening my chest. Whoever had written this knew me, and whoever had left it knew I would come back. Benny leaned against my side, steady and warm, as if reminding me that I was not alone, not anymore. I slipped the envelope into my coat, my pulse racing. The setup was complete, and for the first time since the fire, I understood something clearly. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming my name. I waited until I was back in the car to open the envelope. My fingers hesitated, as if paper could bite, as if the truth had weight enough to bruise. Benny sat upright in the passenger seat, watching me with that steady, almost solemn attention he reserved for moments when my breathing changed. The paper inside was folded once. No wasted space. No hesitation. A key slipped out first, cold and heavy in my palm, the metal worn smooth by years of use. It wasn't symbolic. It was practical. Real. The kind of object that didn't exist unless there was something concrete waiting on the other end. Then, I unfolded the note. Richard didn't just steal your youth. He stole the pension fund. I know because I helped him hide it. I read it once, then again, slowly, as if repetition might soften the impact. It didn't. The world narrowed to the sound of my own heartbeat, loud in my ears, uneven. I had known Richard was cruel. I had known he was manipulative, capable of rewriting reality when it suited him. But this was something colder. This was premeditated erasure. My pension fund had been my quiet reassurance. The invisible safety net I trusted without checking, because trust had once been my default setting. Every extra hour worked. Every sacrifice justified with the thought, at least I'll be safe later. Later had been stolen while I was still standing in the room. My hand tightened around the note, and suddenly the handwriting mattered more than the words themselves. The sharp angles, the controlled loops, the confident spacing. I knew it instantly, Arthur. The name surfaced with a strange mix of relief and dread. Richard's old business partner. The man who used to argue loudly at our dinner table, who drank his coffee too strong and laughed too easily. The man whose funeral I had attended 5 years ago, standing beside Richard as we accepted condolences for a sudden heart attack. The man who was supposed to be dead. My chest tightened, grief and anger tangling together in a way that made it hard to breathe. If Arthur was alive, then everything I had been told, everything I had mourned, had been another carefully staged performance. I looked at Benny, my voice barely more than air. They lied about everything. He tilted his head, eyes soft but alert, as if he understood that something fundamental had shifted. I started the engine. The storage facility wasn't far, but I didn't drive there yet. Instead, I circled the block, my senses sharpened in a way I didn't recognize as my own. Every mirror mattered now. Every reflection felt like a test. That's when Benny barked. It wasn't playful. It wasn't curious. It was sharp, insistent, cutting through my thoughts like a blade. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw it, a black sedan moving too slowly, its windows dark, its presence deliberate. It passed once, then again, its path just subtle enough to be deniable. My pulse quickened. I pulled my hat lower, instinctively shrinking, the old habit rising automatically. Then I stopped. Why am I hiding? The thought came uninvited, but it stayed. They thought I was either dead or desperate. Burned out, cornered, already broken. To them, I was an inconvenience that hadn't finished disappearing yet. The sedan turned the corner again. Fear flickered, yes, but beneath it, something hotter began to spread. A slow, controlled burn that started in my stomach and moved outward. Not panic, not helplessness, indignation. I had given Richard decades. I had given him loyalty, silence, labor, forgiveness he never earned. I had smoothed his edges, absorbed his failures, protected his reputation with my own invisibility. And this was how he repaid it. By trying to erase me completely, as if my life were a bookkeeping error. My hands steadied on the wheel. Benny watched the road now too, his body leaning forward, present, engaged. We weren't running anymore. We were moving. The sedan fell back, then disappeared, but the knowledge remained. I was being watched, measured, misjudged. I drove toward the storage facility at last, the key resting in the cup holder like a promise. With every mile, something old peeled away, the reflex to apologize, the instinct to retreat, the belief that dignity required silence. I spoke aloud without meaning to, my voice low but firm. They don't get to decide how this ends. Benny let out a soft sound, not a bark, not a whine, something steady. Agreement, perhaps, or simply loyalty. I thought of the explosion again, of the apartment reduced to ash and accusation, of the version of myself who would have accepted exile if it meant avoiding conflict. That woman hadn't survived the fire. I felt it clearly now, without sadness, without regret. The sweet, accommodating Viola, the one who swallowed truths to keep the peace, had died in that explosion. right along with the life she had been told to accept. The woman driving this car had her eyes open. She knew she had been robbed, and she was no longer asking for permission to take herself back. I pressed the accelerator slightly harder, the road stretching out ahead of us, uncertain but undeniable. Whatever waited inside that locker, whatever Arthur was about to reveal, I would face it standing. They had underestimated me. And that, I realized with a quiet, steady certainty, was going to cost them everything. I told myself I wouldn't do it. I sat in the car for a long time before turning the engine back on, Benny's chin resting on my knee, his presence a quiet question. I had other options, thinner and riskier, but options nonetheless. And yet my mind kept circling back to Ethan, the way it always had, habit masquerading as hope. I had raised him from the age when grief still made him wake up crying. I had packed his lunches, attended his school plays, defended him when Richard's disappointment turned sharp and public. When people asked if I had children, I always hesitated, not because I didn't love him, but because the world didn't quite know how to label what we were. But I knew. He had been mine in all the ways that mattered, and now I needed cash. Real cash. The kind that didn't leave trails or ask questions. The kind that could buy time. So I called him. His voice on the phone was careful, too calm, as if every word had been rehearsed. Still, he agreed to meet. Suggested a parking garage downtown. Neutral territory, he said. That should have been my first answer. The garage was dim and echoing, concrete swallowing sound and throwing it back distorted. I parked near the center, the engine idling, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Benny sat upright, ears alert, his body stiff in a way I recognized instantly. He hadn't relaxed since we arrived. Then Ethan's car pulled in. A luxury sedan. Black. Polished to the point of arrogance. Benny's growl started low, deep in his chest, a warning rather than a reaction. It surprised me not because he had ever been wrong before, but because some small, stubborn part of me had believed Ethan would still feel like home. Ethan stepped out slowly, expensive shoes clicking against the concrete. He looked older than I remembered, sharper around the eyes. His clothes were perfect. His posture was not. "Viola," he said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his face. I stepped out of the car, closing the door gently behind me. Benny stayed close to my leg, unmoving, his gaze fixed on Ethan like a locked sightline. "You said you needed help," Ethan continued. "I can do that." He reached back into his car and pulled out a small duffel bag, holding it out between us like an offering. But his eyes wouldn't meet mine. They flickered away, then back, then away again. "I can help you get out of the country," he said. "Someplace safe, somewhere, final." The word landed wrong. I took the bag, my fingers brushing his for half a second. His skin was cold. I opened it right there, the zipper loud in the silence. No cash. Inside was a neatly organized packet. A one-way plane ticket to a country I knew too well for its lack of extradition treaties. Beneath it, a stack of papers clipped together, the top page already signed by him. A confession, written in my name. I felt my throat tighten, the air suddenly too thin. I flipped through the pages, my hands shaking now. Every word painted me as unstable, impulsive, dangerous. A woman driven to destroy her own life and everyone around her. A woman who had planned the explosion. "You just have to sign it," Ethan said quietly. "Then you go away. This all ends." I looked up at him, searching his face for something. Guilt, regret, hesitation, anything. "What are you asking me to do?" I said. He swallowed. "I'm trying to save you." "No," I replied softly. "You're trying to erase me." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand what's at stake." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You're choosing the easier version of the truth." Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Benny let out another low growl, stepping slightly forward, placing himself between us without instruction. I took a step back, and that's when I saw it. In the darkened window of Ethan's car, a reflection shifted. A familiar silhouette leaned forward from the back seat. A man I knew by the way his smile never reached his eyes. Richard. He was watching us. Relaxed, one arm draped casually along the seat. His expression calm, victorious. As if this were nothing more than the final confirmation of a deal already closed. The air left my lungs. Ethan followed my gaze and stiffened. Viola. I didn't let him finish. I backed away slowly, the bag slipping from my hands and hitting the concrete with a dull thud. I kept my eyes on Richard's reflection, on the man who had once shared my bed and now shared my son's betrayal. That was the deepest cut of all. Richard's smile widened just slightly. A private celebration. I turned and walked back to my car, my movement steady despite the way my heart was splintering inside my chest. Benny stayed close, his body tense, protective, unwavering. Behind me, I heard Ethan call my name once. Just once. I didn't turn around. As I drove out of the garage, the echo of that place clinging to me like residue, something broke fully open inside my chest, not into despair, but into clarity. I had lost a son that night, but I had also lost my last illusion. And in its place, something stronger was forming, something that didn't need permission or approval or borrowed loyalty to survive. They had taken everything they thought I was. What they hadn't realized yet was that they had finally left me with nothing to lose. I don't remember much of the drive out of the garage, only the way my chest ached, as if something essential had been torn loose and left behind in the concrete echo of that place. My hands stayed steady on the wheel, but my heart felt anything but. Betrayal has a sound. It's quiet. It's the absence of what you believed would be there. Benny sat in the passenger seat, his body angled toward me, eyes never leaving my face. Every time I inhaled too sharply, he shifted closer, a solid, breathing reminder that not everything in my life had turned against me. His presence kept me from unraveling completely. It anchored me to the road, to the now, to the simple truth that I was still here. I'm sorry, I whispered, not sure whether I meant it for him or for the boy I had raised and lost in the same night. Benny rested his chin against the door, accepting the apology without question. He always did. The storage facility sat on the edge of town, anonymous and gray, the kind of place people passed without ever wondering what stories were locked inside its metal doors. My hands trembled as I held up the key, sliding it into the padlock that matched its worn grooves perfectly. The click echoed louder than it should have. I lifted the door slowly. The smell of dust and paper filled the air. Stacked boxes rose on either side like quiet sentinels. For a moment, I thought I was alone until a figure shifted in the back, stepping forward into the dim light. Arthur. He looked thinner, older, but unmistakably alive. His hair had gone almost completely gray, his face lined in ways I didn't remember. But his eyes were sharp, alert, and fixed on me with something that looked like regret. Viola, he said softly, as if saying my name too loudly might break the fragile reality of the moment. I stared at him, my breath caught somewhere between disbelief and relief. You're supposed to be dead. So I've heard, he replied, a tired smile touching his lips. The sound that escaped me was half laugh, half sob. I leaned against the doorframe, my legs suddenly weak. Benny stepped forward, sniffing Arthur cautiously before sitting beside me, watchful but calm. Arthur gestured around us. I didn't know if you'd come. I didn't know if I'd survive long enough to, I said honestly. We sat on overturned boxes, the silence between us heavy but not hostile, just full. Arthur told me everything, his voice steady even when the words weren't. How Richard had manipulated documents, staged his medical collapse, and used the chaos to declare him dead. How the company had slipped entirely into Richard's control within weeks. How the pension fund, my pension fund, had vanished into offshore accounts. And now, Arthur continued, he's framing you. Because if you're found responsible for the explosion, he gets the insurance payout, enough to cover the money he stole and still walk away clean. I closed my eyes, the scope of it settling in my bones. He insured my life without my knowledge. Arthur nodded grimly. A very generous policy. I let out a hollow laugh, shaking my head. I'm a 61-year-old woman with a poodle and a burnt apartment, I said, my voice cracking despite my effort to keep it light. How do we fight a multi-millionaire who's already buried one partner and is trying to bury me? Arthur studied me for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. It wasn't triumphant. It wasn't cruel. It was the smile of someone who had survived long enough to stop being afraid. We don't fight him the way he expects, he said. He stood and walked to a large box near the back, brushing dust from its lid. Written across it in bold marker were 3 words: The Charity Gala. Arthur tapped the box gently. Richard doesn't care about courtrooms. He cares about rooms like this, full of donors, executives, politicians, people who worship the image he's built. My pulse quickened. What are you saying? We destroy that image, he replied. Publicly, completely. We let the truth speak where it hurts him most. I looked down at Benny, who gazed back at me with unshakable trust. For the first time since the explosion, something inside me loosened. Not fear, but possibility. I wasn't alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of my life collapsing. Maybe it was the beginning of taking it back. We disappeared without vanishing. That was the strange discipline of those weeks existing just outside the edges of notice. I learned how to move through a city without leaving a shadow, how to keep my head down without shrinking. Arthur taught me which cameras to avoid, which habits to break. I dyed my hair in a motel bathroom, watching the gray and familiar brown dissolve into a color that didn't belong to my past. When I looked in the mirror afterward, I barely recognized myself, and instead of fear, I felt relief. Benny adapted faster than either of us. He learned silence the way some dogs learn tricks, patiently, proudly. A gentle tap of my fingers against my thigh meant stay. A soft exhale meant go. He became alert without being obvious, curious without drawing attention. Arthur called him our scout, half joking at first, then with real respect when Benny began reacting to things we hadn't noticed yet. At night, when the city settled into its restless sleep, I would sit on the edge of the bed and brush him slowly, methodically, grounding myself in the rhythm. Those moments were when the weight of everything threatened to press me flat, the loss of my home, of my stepson, of the life I had believed was stable. Benny would lean into me, his quiet trust reminding me that reinvention didn't have to mean loneliness. We followed Richard from a distance. Paper trails, public appearances, charity announcements dressed up as generosity. And then we found it, the invitation that made Arthur stop mid-sentence, his finger tapping the screen slowly. Philanthropist of the Year, he read aloud, this weekend. The location listed beneath it stole my breath. Our old family estate. The house where I had hosted dinners, celebrated birthdays, watched guests marvel at Richard's charm while I refilled glasses and smoothed over discomfort. He had always loved that house, not because it was home, but because it looked like success. My hands curled into fists before I realized it. He's parading himself in the ruins, I said quietly. Arthur nodded. He thinks the past belongs to him. Something inside me sharpened then. The anger I had been carrying stopped burning wildly and condensed into something harder, clearer. It wasn't rage anymore. It was resolve. I wasn't doing this just for myself. I thought of the women Richard had dismissed as emotional, difficult, replaceable. The assistants who had signed non-disclosure agreements instead of complaints. the partners' wives who had smiled tightly through humiliation because reputation mattered more than truth. This was for all of us. The plan came together, piece by piece, fragile but precise. We needed proof, undeniable, unfiltered. Something that couldn't be buried or reframed. Arthur could handle the digital side, hijack the projections once the signal was live. But the device itself had to be placed inside Richard's private study, the one room he believed was untouchable. Security would be everywhere. Guards who knew every face. Cameras layered over cameras. No human could get close enough without being flagged. We sat with that reality for a long time. Then I felt it before I thought it. I looked down. Benny was lying at my feet, chewing contentedly on one of Arthur's old pens, utterly underestimated by a world that saw him as decoration rather than presence. He looked up at me, eyes bright, tail thumping once against the floor. Arthur followed my gaze. "No," he said automatically. I didn't answer. I was already imagining it. How often dogs wandered unnoticed through crowds. How doors opened for them without suspicion. How hands reached down to pet instead of question. "He won't be in danger," I said softly. "Not if we do this right." Arthur hesitated. "He's not trained for this." I smiled faintly. Neither was I once. That night, I sat under a single lamp with needle and thread, my hands steady in a way they hadn't been for years. The tiny camera rested beside me, impossibly small, its presence both terrifying and hopeful. I had found the tuxedo online, absurdly elegant, tailored for a poodle who had once slept at my feet while I cried into my hands. "Come here, handsome," I whispered. Benny padded over and sat patiently, chest puffed slightly as if he understood this was important. I worked carefully, stitching the lining, hiding the lens just enough to remain invisible. Every pull of the thread felt like a promise, not just to Arthur, not just to myself, but to this creature who trusted me completely. "You're braver than anyone gives you credit for," I murmured, pressing my forehead gently to his. "So am I." When I finished, I held the tuxedo up, the fabric catching the light. It wasn't just a costume, it was a key. And for the first time since my world had burned, I felt something close to hope. Not the fragile kind, but the kind built on preparation, courage, and the quiet certainty that I was no longer running. We were ready. The night of the gala arrived, dressed in silk and illusion. I stood in the service corridor of the estate, my reflection warped in a stainless steel prep table. Hair tucked beneath a plain cap, black trousers, white shirt already smelling faintly of wine and starch. I looked like someone who belonged nowhere and everywhere. That was the point. My heart was not cooperating. It pounded so hard I was sure someone would hear it, would turn, would look at me more closely and see not a caterer, but a ghost walking back into her own life. As I stepped onto the polished floors, carrying a tray I had practiced balancing for hours, I passed faces I had once toasted with, women who had hugged me at holidays, men who had shaken Richard's hand and ignored mine. No one recognized me. That hurt more than I expected, and it helped. Music floated through the rooms, expensive and carefully unobtrusive. Laughter followed it, bright and rehearsed. Everywhere I looked, people were performing generosity, smiling too wide, touching arms too lightly, congratulating one another on being good. I kept my eyes down, one step at a time, one breath after another. In my ear, barely audible beneath the noise, Arthur's voice came through. "I'm in position. Systems are mapped. Waiting on our gentleman." I didn't answer. I couldn't risk my voice breaking. Benny waited near the garden entrance, sitting patiently beside a decorative hedge, the tuxedo fitting him perfectly. He looked absurdly dignified, like he understood the gravity of the night. When our eyes met, something in my chest tightened. Not fear, but pride. I crouched briefly, as if adjusting my shoe, and leaned close enough to whisper, "Go to your room, boy." His ears flicked. That was all. He stood, trotted forward with calm confidence, and disappeared into the crowd. I straightened slowly, my hands trembling now that the moment had arrived. I moved to a corner where I could pretend to polish glassware while my phone rested against my hip, the live feed already active. There he was. Benny navigated the room with ease, weaving between long gowns and polished shoes, accepting distracted pats without stopping. No one questioned a well-dressed dog at a gala meant to celebrate excess. He moved like he belonged there because once he had. I followed his progress on the screen, my breath shallow. Past the grand staircase, past the hallway lined with photographs of Richard shaking hands with important men, past the door to the study. He stopped. The camera tilted slightly as Benny sat. The door was closed. My pulse spiked. My fingers tightened around the edge of the tray until the glassware rattled softly. I turned away from the room, pretending to busy myself while panic pressed against my ribs. "Arthur," I whispered, barely moving my lips. "I see it," he replied. Doors locked. Seconds stretched thin, too thin, then movement. The door opened. A woman's laugh floated into the hallway, light and dismissive. "Oh, look at the stray dog," she said. My blood turned cold. The camera jolted as hands scooped Benny up, the image blurring briefly. I recognized the voice before my mind was ready to accept it, the cadence. The warmth sharpened into cruelty by recognition. Sarah, my former best friend, the woman who had held my hand during my divorce, who had sworn loyalty while quietly stepping into the life I had lost. She cradled Benny as if he were an accessory, cooing softly, unaware or uncaring of what she carried. She stepped fully into the study. The door closed behind her. For a moment, the world narrowed to the sound of my own breathing and the faint rustle of fabric through the microphone. I tasted copper, my jaw clenched so hard it ached. I wanted to scream her name, to run, to tear the illusion down with my bare hands. Instead, I stood still. I had learned that survival sometimes meant restraint. On the screen, Benny was set gently on the rug. The rug. The old Persian one I had chosen years ago because it made the room warmer, less like a fortress. He sniffed once, then moved with purpose, slipping under the desk exactly as we had hoped. Arthur's voice was tight now. "We're live, stay with me." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Across the ballroom, applause swelled as Richard took the stage, his voice magnified, confident, smooth. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. My focus stayed on the small screen glowing in my hand, on the quiet courage of a dog who trusted me completely. Benny paused beneath the desk, the camera settling into position. The angle caught polished shoes, the edge of a safe, the hem of Sarah's dress as she laughed again, already forgetting the stray she had delivered into danger. Tears burned behind my eyes, not from fear, but from the weight of it all. The layers of betrayal, the years of silence, the fragile miracle that we were still here. "You're doing so good," I whispered, barely sound. Just like we practiced. In the middle of the noise and lies, something sacred was unfolding. Precise. Irreversible. And I knew with a certainty that steadied me, that no matter how this ended, I had already crossed a line I would never return from. I was no longer invisible. I was inside the lion's den, and this time, I had brought the truth with me. Recognition hit me like a delayed wound. The woman's perfume, even through the microphone, triggered a memory before the camera fully adjusted. Soft florals. Familiar, intimate. Then her voice settled into place inside my chest, and the truth landed with a quiet brutality I hadn't prepared for. Sarah. My Sarah. The woman who had cried on my couch after her divorce. Mascara streaking down her cheeks as I held her and told her she would survive it. The woman I had defended when others whispered, The woman who now cradled my dog like a novelty and stepped willingly into the heart of my ruin. My fingers went numb around the phone. Inside the study, laughter spilled freely. Male laughter, comfortable, unafraid. Richard's voice came first, smooth and indulgent. You see? Everything resolves itself when you're patient. Then Ethan's laugh followed, nervous around the edges, but real. I still can't believe how clean it all went. The sound of liquid poured. I clinked against crystal. Scotch. I swallowed hard. The room around me, the gala, the music, the applause, faded into a dull blur. All that existed was that study and the men inside it, relaxed in the certainty that they had won. Sarah set Benny down, still smiling, already distracted. He must belong to someone important, she said lightly. Look at that tux, Richard chuckled. Everything in this house belongs to me. Benny moved. My brave, beautiful boy slipped from her attention without sound, padding across the rug as if he were exactly what they believed him to be. Harmless, ornamental, beneath notice. He paused only once, lifting his head as if listening for me, then lowered himself and disappeared beneath the desk. My breath caught. From the camera's angle, I saw the underside of polished wood, the edge of a steel safe recessed into the wall. Shoes shifted. A chair scraped softly. Richard took a sip. Once the insurance clears, it's done. No loose ends. Ethan hesitated. I could hear it in the silence before he spoke. And Viola? Richard scoffed. A tragic woman, unstable. The public loves a cautionary tale. Something inside me twisted. Not pain this time, but something tougher. Then the conversation changed. Richard's voice lowered, casual in a way that made me shiver. The offshore transfers need to be rerouted again. The Colombians don't like delays. I froze. Ethan let out a sharp breath. I know. I'm doing everything I can. You're doing what you're told, Richard corrected, because they don't forgive debt. My vision blurred as the words sank in. This wasn't just embezzlement. This was laundering. Deep, systematic, dangerous. Arthur's breath hissed quietly in my ear. Jesus, Viola. Ethan spoke again, his voice tight. I didn't have a choice. Richard laughed softly. Everyone has a choice. You just chose survival. The realization hit me with staggering force. Ethan hadn't betrayed me for greed alone. He had been cornered, terrified, indebted to people who didn't threaten, they erased. Understanding didn't soften the betrayal, but it reshaped it. Benny shifted beneath the desk, the camera adjusting slightly. I saw Richard's foot move, too fast. The next sound ripped something open inside me. A sharp yelp, high, painful, real. Richard had kicked under the desk without looking, irritated, careless, his boot connecting with living flesh instead of wood. No, I breathed. The world went red. Not metaphorically, viscerally. A surge of heat and clarity so intense it drowned out every other sensation. My heart slammed against my ribs, fury and terror colliding into something feral. On the screen, Benny recoiled, his small body trembling. He didn't bark again. He didn't run. He stayed silent, curled tight, loyal even in pain. Arthur's voice was urgent now. Viola, stay with me, stay still. I couldn't feel my hands. I couldn't feel my feet on the marble floor. All I could see was my dog hurt because of men who believed power made them untouchable. Richard grumbled. Damn thing. Sarah laughed weakly, probably startled. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Benny shifted once more, then went still. His breathing shallow, but present. Alive. That was the moment something fundamental inside me broke open. Not into despair, but into absolute resolve. They had crossed the final line. This was no longer about money, or reputation, or even justice in the abstract. This was about protecting what little innocence I had left in this world. I straightened slowly, my body moving before my mind caught up. The fear that had governed me for weeks evaporated, burned away by something stronger. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was ready. And whatever happened next, whatever it cost, I knew one thing with unwavering certainty. I would not let them walk away from this. Not after that. I didn't wait for the signal because there are moments when the body moves before the mind can catch up, when instinct rises like a tide and sweeps caution away. My hands were shaking as I reached for the seam of the catering uniform, the cheap fabric damp against my skin, smelling of wine and nervous sweat. For a fraction of a second, I felt ridiculous, exposed, an aging woman about to commit a social crime in a room full of polished smiles. Then I remembered the nights I'd cried quietly so no one would hear, the way my name had been erased from my own life. The sound Benny made when Richard's boots struck him. The uniform came off in one clean motion, pooling at my feet like a shed skin. The red dress beneath it caught the light immediately. I felt it before I saw it reflected in the startled faces around me, the sharp intake of breath, the sudden hush as people turned. Red had always scared me. It demanded to be seen. Tonight, I let it. My heart hammered so hard I was afraid it would bruise my ribs as I walked forward, each step deliberate, each heel striking the marble floor like a punctuation mark. I passed people who had toasted at my wedding, who had sat at my table and laughed at my jokes, their eyes sliding away now as if recognition itself were contagious. In my ear, Arthur's voice was a low, steady thread anchoring me. "I've got the feed," he murmured. I pictured him in the van, hands flying over keys, jaw clenched in that way he had when he was afraid, but refused to admit it. Trusting him had once nearly destroyed me. Trusting him again felt like standing at the edge of a cliff and choosing to step forward anyway. The music faltered as I reached the ballroom doors. Inside, crystal chandeliers spilled light over silk gowns and tailored suits. Over Richard, standing at the stage with that familiar, benevolent smile, basking in applause that wasn't earned. The screens behind him glowed with his carefully curated image: philanthropist, savior, generous soul. For a heartbeat, doubt stabbed at me. What if no one believed me? What if this only ended with me humiliated all over again? Then the screens flickered. A murmur rippled through the room as Richard's face dissolved into the grainy, intimate view from Benny's collar camera. The study appeared larger on the screen, distorted slightly at the edges, but unmistakable. A glass clinked somewhere. Someone laughed nervously. I felt the room lean forward as one, curiosity overcoming politeness. On screen, Richard's voice filled the ballroom, louder than it had ever been in our marriage, stripped of its charm and softened edges. He was laughing with Ethan, the sound sharp and careless. "You know," he said, swirling the scotch in his glass. Burning down the old hag's apartment was the easiest solution. Insurance paid out, and she was too broken to fight it. The words landed like blows. I heard a woman near me gasp. A man muttered, "Jesus." My stomach twisted, but I kept walking. The feed continued, merciless. Richard's face hardened as he spoke about Arthur, about staging his death, about how useful fear was when you knew how to apply it. "People believe what they need to," he said on screen, smug. "And if they don't, you make them." I stepped onto the stage as the room dissolved into stunned silence. The heat from the lights pressed against my skin, but I barely felt it. I took the microphone from its stand with hands that no longer shook and turned to face the camera lens trained on me. That unblinking eye that had once only ever seen Richard's version of the truth. "The old hag is here, Richard," I said, my voice steady, carrying farther than I expected. I saw his head snap up on the screen, confusion flashing before recognition set in. And she brought receipts. For a moment, time fractured. I saw my younger self in flashes, folding his shirts, believing apologies, swallowing doubts. I saw Benny as a puppy, trusting me completely. I saw Arthur's supposed grave, the lie I had mourned beside. All of it converged in that instant, and instead of breaking me, it held me upright. The doors at the back of the ballroom burst open with a force that sent a shockwave through the crowd. Screams erupted as men I didn't recognize strode in, their presence heavy, their eyes cold and assessing. They didn't look at me or the stage at first. They were watching the screens, just like everyone else. I understood then, with a clarity that was almost calm, that this wasn't just my reckoning. It was Richard's collision with every lie he'd told himself was contained. Ethan's voice carried faintly through the feed, panicked now, pleading. Richard's confidence cracked, his posture shifting as he realized the audience for his confessions had grown far beyond what he could control. The enforcers moved forward, purposeful, and the ballroom descended into chaos, chairs scraping, people scrambling, the veneer of civility shattering like thin glass. I stood my ground. In the middle of fear and noise, I felt something unexpected bloom in my chest. Relief. Not because the danger was gone, it wasn't, but because the truth was finally louder than the lies. I thought of Benny, brave and hurting, but still doing his job. I thought of myself, a woman who had been dismissed and diminished, now impossible to ignore. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing with a certainty that steadied my breath. I had stepped out of the shadows. I had chosen to be seen, and in that choice, I had already begun to reclaim everything I'd been told was lost. The room dissolved into noise, movement, and fear, but it all felt strangely distant to me, like I was standing behind thick glass. People were shouting, chairs overturned, heels slipped on marbles slick with spilled champagne. Somewhere behind me, authoritative voices cut through the panic, sharp and practiced, announcing themselves as the FBI. Arthur had done it. Even in the middle of collapse, he had protected the landing. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I moved with a calm that surprised even me, my body guided by a single, unwavering instinct. I turned away from the ballroom, away from the spectacle, and walked down the familiar corridor toward the study. Each step echoed with memories layered on top of one another. Holidays, arguments, long silences where love had quietly died. The door was ajar now, hanging crooked on its hinges. Inside, the air felt smaller, heavier. The smell of scotch still lingered, sharp and sweet. Then I saw him. Benny was pressed against the wall near the desk, his small body curled in on itself, eyes wide and searching. When our gazes met, his tail thumped weakly against the floor, a fragile question. I dropped to my knees without thinking, the expensive fabric of my dress forgotten, and opened my arms. He rushed into them with a soft, broken sound that undid me completely. "Oh, my brave boy," I whispered, scooping him up, holding him close as if my arms could erase the moment he'd been hurt. His body trembled, but he was warm, alive. I buried my face in his curly brown fur, breathing him in, grounding myself in the familiar scent of safety and home. "We did it," I murmured over and over. "We did it, boy." For the first time that night, my tears came freely. They weren't sharp or desperate. They were quiet, releasing years of fear, betrayal, and disbelief. Benny licked my cheek, clumsy and earnest, as if reminding me to stay here in this moment where we had survived. When I finally stood, cradling him against my chest, the world outside the study had shifted irrevocably. Richard was being led down the hallway in handcuffs, his face drained of color, his shoulders slumped in a way I had never seen before. The man who once filled rooms with confidence now avoided every gaze, stripped bare by his own words. Ethan followed behind him, eyes wild, mouth opening and closing as if searching for an explanation that no longer mattered. Sarah stood frozen near the ballroom doors, one hand pressed to her chest, mascara streaked down her face. Our eyes met briefly. There was no anger left in me, no satisfaction. only a quiet sadness for what she had chosen to become and a deeper gratitude that I no longer belonged to that world. I walked past them without a word. 6 months later, the air smelled like water and pine. Morning light spilled gently over the wooden porch of a small cottage by the lake, turning everything soft and gold. I sat wrapped in a blanket, a warm mug between my hands, listening to the simple, perfect sounds of peace. Benny tore across the yard, barking joyfully as he chased a pair of unimpressed ducks, his legs a blur of happiness. I laughed, an unguarded, full laugh that surprised me with its ease. Arthur sat beside me in a worn chair, relaxed in a way I'd never seen him before, sipping tea like it was the most natural thing in the world. The past no longer hovered between us like a ghost. We had rebuilt something quieter, truer, based on honesty instead of illusion. The letter rested on my lap, its official seal already broken. I read it slowly, letting each word settle. The district attorney confirmed it all: the return of every stolen asset, additional damages, full legal closure. Justice, written plainly on white paper. I folded the letter and looked out at the lake, its surface smooth and endless. For the first time in years, my future felt the same way. I wasn't just free from Richard. I was free from the version of myself that had believed endurance was the same as love. Benny bounded back toward me, tongue lolling, eyes bright, and rested his head on my knee. I ran my fingers through his fur, feeling the steady rhythm of a life that had trusted me completely. It had been right to do so. I was older. I was wiser. I was scarred. And I was whole. If this story moved you, if you believe in quiet strength, second chances, and the courage it takes to reclaim yourself, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. More stories of resilience, justice, and renewal are waiting for you.